If you're getting into Google Ads, chances are you want to make a ton of money. When it comes to scaling ads, there's a good way of going about it and there's a bad way of going about it, especially on the Google Ads world where you can do things a little too quick and it might completely alter or really hurt the campaigns you're running. So in this video, I'm going to go over exactly how we scale ads on the Google side most profitably and also at the quickest pace. Jumping in, there's a couple of key factors to this. First is going to be setting up campaigns for success. A lot of the times when it comes to Google Ads, there's no necessarily like mystic secret or secret recipe to the utmost success. A lot of times it's how you build out the campaigns. When it comes to building out campaigns, there's a lazy way of doing it. There's a way of doing it where you're going to set it up for the most success. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Next is going to be scaling horizontally. When it comes to Google Ads, you're scaling a little bit differently than you might on some of these other platforms like Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. We'll go into that. And then the last two is going to be pacing increases, which will allow you to scale at the most profit and also not make your campaigns go haywire. And then the most scalable campaign types. So jumping into the first topic, setting campaigns up for success is going to be the foundation of your account. If you don't do this properly, you're setting everything up for failure. You're going to stunt the growth. You're going to be charged more for traffic. All these bad things are going to happen you want to happen. So the key to this is the quality and variety of assets, along with some targeting, which we'll talk about. But when it comes to the assets you need, it's, with Facebook, you might have picture, you might have video, and that's going to be a little bit centric to the ads. On Google, you have the text ads, you have video, you have display images, and then you also have the shopping side, which will pull in product pictures and also the feed and things of that nature. But when it comes to this, because you don't have so much space when it comes to creatives, you want to make sure you do a really good job with them. So highly recommend making sure in each of those different categories you have a very good amount of different creatives you can test in between. And then also most of the campaign types, especially PMax, will do the testing for you. So you might give it 10 photos, 10 videos, 8 different descriptions, 10 different titles, whatever it is. And then it's going to do the work of, as far as rotating through them to figure out what does the best on the actual platform. That's why you want to make sure you give it everything that it'll take. And on top of that, put in the effort to make sure it's the best quality that you can put in. That way it gives Google the most arsenal to get the best results for you. Next is going to be campaign structure. So when it comes to campaigns, you want to segment them per relevancy. We've talked about relevancy in a couple different videos. Relevancy is the core to Google because once again, Google only wants to show ads to people that are highly relevant to them because it keeps people on Google. If you go to Google and search a question or look for a different product type, you start getting nonsense ads, you're not going to use Google anymore. So they take it very seriously. You don't want to go overkill though. So like if you're doing search ads, for example, you don't need to have a campaign for every single keyword you want to target. That's when you start getting into asset groupings, the ads and things of that nature. You essentially want to always group assets together. So we'll back up real quick. There's two levels of control. Campaign levels where you're going to control budget, and then asset levels, which is going to house the keywords you're targeting, and then the ads you're putting in place and where you're sending the ads. So on the ad group side, you want to make sure to have relevancy towards the grouping of what you're targeting, and then making sure the ads will send people to the relevant type pages. So if you have multiple products, you might want to separate each product into different asset groups and have keywords for that product in that asset group. And then of course the ad will send people to the right landing page or the right product page for the product. That's going to keep things very relevant. And then on the campaign side, if you want to make sure that people, not so much people, but the asset groups or the ads or the products are getting specific budgets, you can segment them by that means too and keep things chopped up into different campaigns. That way each type of targeting gets its own budget if you want to do it in that way. It's generally how we do it. That way Google doesn't dictate where your budget goes. You get to make sure that budget goes where you want it to go and not kind of spread around based off of how the algorithm wants it. Next thing is going to be market size. So when it comes to market size, it's a little bit different of a conversation on the Google world because you're fixated on the amount of people searching certain terms per month, and there's not an infinite amount of that. So when it comes to scalability, it will be dictated by the amount of people searching these terms. When you do your keyword research, if you're going after longer tail keywords, they're going to have smaller amounts of searches, right? So you're going to want to group together more and more and more if you can and they're relevant. If you're on the broad side, you don't need as many keywords, but you want to stay specific to the products you're targeting, and then obviously the volume of keyword types. So generally, the broader the keyword, the less of them you're going to use in an ad group. The more specific of a keyword, you're going to use more of them in an ad group. So make sure to, of course, separate by relevancy, but that's a good rule of thumb when building out your campaigns. Next is going to be scaling horizontally. So I use this term a lot. It essentially means instead of dumping all your money in one or two campaigns and those scaling, with Google, you're generally going to scale into separate campaigns because like we talked about, there's not a huge market to go in after if you're going after certain keyword types. So you're going to maximize the amount you can target profitably in a campaign and the keywords you're going after, and then you're going to move on. That way it's almost a staircase, and by the end of the day, when you're really building an account, you're going to have a ton of campaigns that are maxed out to their volume you can target, and then you'll find new marketing targets you can go after, new keywords, new campaign types, and keep stacking on top of each other instead of dumping all of your budget in one or two campaigns like you might on Facebook, right? So next thing is going to be scaling Google versus Facebook. Like I mentioned, you're generally going to be fixated on the campaigns that are working, and at some point you're going to hit a plateau. That's when you move on. Facebook, a lot of times you can pump big budget into certain campaigns if you have like more minimal campaigns. It's just a different world when it comes to Google. As much as we love to easily scale up one campaign, can't always do that. So that's when you want to start stacking them on top of each other. And then the one thing about this is the most applicable to search. If you're running PMAX, a lot of the times, unless you're doing a different type of PMAX strategy, like breaking them up per category, whatever it is, you may only have one PMAX campaign, and you're going to max out at that at some point too. It doesn't mean you can just keep building new and new PMAX campaigns. This is more for the search side. Same thing for YouTube. YouTube is closer to the Facebook side when it comes to scalability. It's kind of in between the two. So make sure you have different scaling strategies per each campaign type as well as we talk about them. Next thing is going to be pacing increases. So when it comes to Google, you can't just go crazy and if something's working, dump hundreds of dollars a day onto a campaign. You need to do increases based off of the actual ROI that's coming in. So we've talked about break-even ROI and then also scale ROI. Break-even ROI is going to be the ROI point where you're not losing money, you're kind of breaking even on the product being sold or multiple products being sold. And then the scale ROI is going to be how much profit you want to tolerate to keep putting money on something that's working. And let's say your scale ROI is 3x and your campaign ROI is 5x. You have a little bit of room to push the budget, right? Anytime you increase budget, ROI is going to come down. The higher the budget, the more increase you can do on the campaign side, and it'll start shifting upwards. And then you get closer and closer to that tolerance point. So when it comes to that, we'll usually do increases between 20 to 50% depending on the ROI. If let's say your scale ROI is 3x and your campaign ROI is 8x, you could probably do a 50% increase there. It might not be as exciting on a campaign that's doing $100 per day, but this is the best way to scale safely. That way you don't make the campaigns go haywire, which will set you back a week or two. And then wait a couple of days. If you see the same ROI or a little bit less, then you know how much to increase after the 72-hour rule, which we talked about on the marketing side. Generally want to let a campaign run for about 3 days to see the outcome of your test. And then what will happen if you scale too fast? With Google specifically, they want to spend your money no matter what. It's very easy to get your money thrown down the drain if you're not careful with this. And when you give Google too much budget, what it'll do is it'll start fishing for broader traffic that's cheaper and you won't get any conversions. So the last thing you want to do is trigger Google's mind to all of a sudden start reaching just to spend your money and not have it fixated on the type of traffic that's converting, which it will do if you pace your scaling. The last thing is going to be most scalable campaign types. So they all scale in different ways and they all kind of scale also with the risk level too. So on the search side, you have a lot less risk because you can control the traffic quality, but it's a little bit harder to scale because you're stuck to the market size of the keywords. PMAX, you're setting it up really well, but you are fixated and stuck to how far the algorithm will carry that campaign. And at some point it will hit a plateau and only scale as you work on your assets. And then YouTube, very, very scalable, but very hard to crack the code on the e-com side. If you can crack it and you have great video, great assets that's going to convert that traffic, amazing. You'll be able to scale it out like crazy, but it is harder to get to that point. So they all come with their own pros and cons. But we always highly recommend starting with search and PMAX and then get to YouTube once you dial those in and kind of hit some plateaus in that world as well. If you have any questions, please feel free to throw them in the comments section. I'll answer them personally. And like and subscribe if you like this content. We have more to come.